In this section, we're going to talk about the authentication mechanism, flaws, and how to beat the authentication mechanisms. Authentication is the process of verification that an individual, entity, or website is who it claims to be. Authentication in the context of web applications is commonly performed by submitting a username or ID and one or more items of private information that only a given user should know. The authentication process can be two-sided. The user can verify the identity of the server while the server authenticates the identity of the user. The application should have a strong password policy and should have prevention methods to dispose of brute force attacks. The authentication methods are displayed in the slide. Since other methods have some disadvantages, the most commonly used authentication method is form-based authentication. Form-based authentications are flexible, so you can use different authentication factors together. In addition, they are able to be used with the proxies and firewalls, etc. In most cases, username and password values are used to authenticate a user. In this case, it's vital to have strong passwords. Therefore, the application should have a strong password policy. Here is an example for a good password policy. Password must meet at least 3 out of the 4 following complexity rules. At least 1 uppercase character, at least 1 lowercase character, at least 1 digit, and at least 1 special character. Password must have at least 10 characters, and you cannot use more than 2 identical characters in a row. For instance, 111 is not allowed. There are 3 factors in authentication mechanisms. 1. The knowledge factors, something the user knows, a password, partial password, passphrase, or PIN, etc. 2. The ownership factors, something the user has, an ID card, security token, cell phone with built-in hardware token, software token, etc. 3. The inherence factor, something the user is or does, a fingerprint, retinal pattern, DNA sequence, signature, face, voice, etc. And there are 3 types of authentication. 1. Single-factor authentication. As the weakest level of authentication, only a single component from one of the 3 categories of factors is used to authenticate an individual's identity. 2. Two-factor authentication. When elements representing 2 factors are required for authentication, the term is applied. For example, a bank card, something the user has, and a PIN, something the user knows. 3. Multi-factor authentication. Instead of using 2 factors, multiple authentication factors are used to enhance security. So, while trying to bypass authentication mechanisms, first, we try to find out valid credentials. For this purpose, let's first attempt to log in to the application using valid and invalid username-password pairs. Analyze the reactions of the application in case of different login attempts. Examine the error codes and error pages returned after these attempts. Try to reach restricted pages and see if there are adequate access controls. Examine the responses of the application. Don't forget to try the default username and passwords. We can use the username and password policies of the company who owns the application if we were able to find the policies while gathering information. In some of the applications, there are password recovery mechanisms, such as hidden questions. You should examine these mechanisms closely. If the answer space is big enough, for example, to fit the answer for what's your favorite color, is it big enough? We can talk about 2 basic types of online password cracking. Brute force attacks work by calculating every possible combination that could make up a password and testing it to see if the password is correct. As the password's length increases, the amount of time, on average, to find the correct password increases exponentially. As you see, the possibility to find a password using brute force attack is theoretically 100%. But cracking the password can take many years, depending on the password complexity. So to make the possible value set smaller, it's better to use this method if we know something which will reduce the number of tries such as the length of the password. Since users tend to use known words, in dictionary attack, we use previously prepared dictionaries to find the passwords. It's a smarter method compared to brute force attacks and reduces the number of tries dramatically. But in this case, finding the password is not guaranteed. You can find the password only if it's not complicated enough. It's possible to prepare sector-specific or company-specific dictionaries to increase the chance.